Hello, Dave the Rave Roving the Rock here on YouTube and ArranSound.com Distal Radio, and today I'm going to read you a short story. I wrote this story myself 7 years ago in 2016, and it's called Staring Upwards. Here goes. Dave stood quite still in the hallway of his house in Whitng Bay, briefly bracing himself for the difficulty of the task that lay before him. Just trying to remain upright was presenting him with a real challenge, and he was now hunched over, leaning against the wall beside him for support. He could barely move, but he knew that a hard challenge lay in front of him, and he simply had to overcome it. To his right, he spotted a small, untidy pile of unopened mail that lay just where it had fallen on the floor when it was posted through the door. He didn't have the strength to manoeuvre his body along the hallway and pick it up, and certainly wouldn't have been able to read it, even if he had. That can wait. Another job for another day, he mused. He turned his head to see what was going on around him before he attempted to continue his journey. Reassuringly, immediately beside him sat his two little Westies, Poppy and Polo, waiting patiently to see what he was going to do next. They followed him everywhere he went. Each had their own character. Poppy was a dog of intelligence. She was wondering what the delay was all about. And Polo was the dog of loyalty. He would have fought a dinosaur for either of his companions, if such things existed nowadays, and was waiting to see whatever Poppy or Dave would do next, so that he could do likewise. They were his little white shadows, and he loved them with all his heart. They were also, unfortunately, the source of his great discomfort at the present time. He reflected that it had already taken him a mighty effort just to get to the point that he was at now. Dave was very ill indeed. So ill that he had been bedridden for a couple of days, and was, in honesty, worried that he just might not survive whatever was ailing him. He felt truly awful. He was all alone in the house except for his two canine companions, who were in the bedroom with him. Lying semi-comatose and fully clothed in his bed, he had been able to resist every reason to get up, apart from one. The dog of loyalty had started scratching at the bedroom door, which meant that he had to be let out for a toilet stop, and without much delay, or the consequences would be unpleasant. Dave remained motionless for a while, hoping forlornly that if he ignored it, the noise might simply stop and the problem would go away or somehow resolve itself, but it continued unrelentingly. "Oh my goodness," Dave said. Groaning out loud, he turned onto his side, sat up, and slowly rose from his bed. He lurched towards the door opening and thumped the left shoulder of his unsteady body against the bedroom door frame as he reached it. Ow! He was going to have to do better than this. His gait was very unsteady, but holding tightly onto the handrail with both hands, he staggered downstairs. Even stepping down the stairs was a real effort. He then walked slowly across the kitchen floor with his eyes half closed, and opened the back door to let the dogs out to do their doings. The garden was securely fenced off, so the dogs could be left to their own devices quite safely. It was cold outside, but this was the first proper spring day of the year so far, and the sun was just starting to rise. Although the garden around the back door was still shaded and cold, the furthest away part of the garden was drenched in warmth and light. the two eager terriers headed off excitedly in that direction. Dave knew that, to be fair, he would have to give the dogs at least a few minutes outside, so he decided to make himself a mug of tea while he waited and then call them back in. He put the kettle on and put the tea bag and milk in his mug, and then he remembered that headache tablets would be quite useful for fighting the fever that his body was currently inflicted with, or perhaps infected with would be more accurate. So he raked about in a high cupboard beside him and finally managed to locate a packet of paracetamol caplets. Feeling quite proud of his achievement, he turned back to see how the kettle was doing. Not very well. The wait for it to boil was almost interminable. Dave closed his eyes briefly, steadying himself with one hand resting on the kitchen worktop in front of him. He then suddenly began to feel quite faint. It was as if, by losing his concentration on the task at hand, he was also losing his ability to remain conscious at all. He was going to sleep standing up. He felt dizzy and knew that he was about to black out. Just as he was about to fall onto the hard kitchen floor, he threw himself onto the worktop and managed to avoid his fate just in time, recovering slumped on top of it. Gosh, that was a dumb thing to do, he thought. He finished making the tea as fast as he could after that to avoid any further mishap. He then shuffled to the back door and called for the dogs to come back inside. Unfortunately, the hedge was too high at the back door for the sun to shine where Dave was standing, and in the cool shade, an icy blast blew against his already cold body, causing him to reel. It was cold outside, but in his ailing state he felt absolutely freezing. He called again, with more purpose this time, and the dog of loyalty returned as bidden. The dog of intelligence, however, remained at the foot of the garden, out of sight. She had more of a mind of her own. With horror, it occurred to him that he couldn't go back upstairs until the errant Westie decided she'd had enough of the sunshine. But he also couldn't go and get her, and he couldn't see her either. The cold wind and the effort to walk along the garden would be simply beyond his capabilities. He was stuck where he was for however long it took until the dog of intelligence decided to come back inside. He called her again several more times, and in desperation eventually started simply pleading with her to come back, not even caring if his neighbours heard his desperate cries to his dog. His desperation was greater than his embarrassment. He was really struggling now, not knowing what else to do. Eventually, she happily came back into view, trotting towards the back door again. Phew! Once inside, he locked the door, and they all made their way to the place where they were right now, at the foot of the stairs. Dave was a keen runner, fit as a fiddle and skinny as a rake, a man whose energetic body could ordinarily propel him running without stopping all the way up to the top of Goat Fell, the highest mountain on the Isle of Arran where he lived. He was used to his body being able to do whatever he wanted it to do, so today was even more shocking for that reason. It just wasn't responding at all. In fact, he had never felt as ill in his whole life. He stood, staring up the stairs, wondering how on earth he was going to get back up them. His face was covered in sweat, which had left a salty residue all over his eyes. He wiped them vigorously with his fingers to try to clear his blurred vision, but this only served to make his eyes sting even more. He could hardly see. In his pocket was the box of paracetamol, and in his right hand was the mug of tea, which he was trying not to spill. All he had to do, with only his left hand free to hold on to the handrail beside it, was move his virus-ridden body up to the top of the stairs, where he would be able to return to the sanctuary of his warm bed where he needed to be. Oh well, here goes nothing. Holding on to the handrail tightly, he started to climb the stairs very slowly, one at a time, placing both feet on every tread. He knew there were 5 stairs up to the first of the 2 landings, then 2 more to the second, and a final flight of 7 stairs to the top. He counted them off in his head as he rose up, to distract himself from the task, a trick that he had learned from running. Mind over matter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As he reached the first landing, he began to shake uncontrollably. Clearly, his efforts thus far were taking a heavy toll. He had been standing for far too long already, and really needed to stop. A small white blur raced past him, charging over both of the landings and bounding easily to the top of the stairs. It was the dog of intelligence. How easy was that? Thought Dave as he started groaning out loud. Ironically, the dog of intelligence, the cause of the delay at the back door, now stood at the top of the stairs, staring impatiently back down and wondering why he wasn't following her up at the same pace. He continued upwards. 1, 2, and at the second landing he began to breathe quite heavily from the effort, which caused him to start coughing. This made breathing much harder altogether. Bent over double, trying to catch his breath, he staggered backwards a little to the edge of the landing, his foot just catching on the edge of the tread behind him. Whoa! He was about to lose his footing, but his body responded by jerking upright and managed to steady itself just in time. Phew, close one. I could have fallen back down the stairs, he thought. He realised that unfortunately this quick reaction had caused him to spill half of his tea on the landing carpet. The dog of loyalty trotted easily up past him, and upon reaching the top, he also turned and sat down beside his companion at the top step, facing back towards him. Both dogs were gazing down at him now with puzzled expressions, looking to him like they were asking themselves, "What on earth are you doing down there?" The dogs looked at once both beautiful and mocking to his eyes. So easy for you, but so hard for me, he thought. Still, only 7 more stairs to go and he would be at the top. Just as he started his final ascent, the telephone started ringing in the downstairs hallway, and automatically he turned round in order to answer it. Wait a minute, what am I doing? The phone's at the bottom of the stairs, he thought. There's not a snowball's chance in hell I can go back down there, It'll just need to ring, no matter who it is." He returned to the task at hand while the phone continued to ring aimlessly only a few feet from where he stood. On he trudged. 1, 2, 3, 4, until, at 3 stairs from the top, he realised that the dogs were now blocking his path onto the top landing. If they didn't move out of the way, he would be stuck, balancing his motionless body on the very top step below the landing. And he didn't know if he could even do that. As he wobbled towards them, he gave a rather panic-stricken command. "Go on! Go on! Just go on!" 5, 6. Happily, the dogs turned and moved out of the way just as he reached the top, and he stepped rather relievedly onto the relative safety of the top landing. The phone was still ringing away. "I hope it wasn't important," he thought. When he finally entered the bedroom, he placed the hard-fought-for, half-full mug of tea onto the bedside cabinet, and even proudly remembered the paracetamol in his pocket, with which he did likewise, and then got straight back into his bed, still fully clothed, and now with a second sweater on too. The phone finally fell silent. His feet fell onto his now cold hot water bottle, and they remained there. He couldn't possibly have refilled it with warm water, and actually didn't even have the energy left to move it out of his bed, so it stayed just where it was. He lay quite still, aware that, oddly, whilst he was shivering fiercely, there were also rivulets of sweat running down the centre of his chest at the same time. Hot and cold, what a crazy mixture. He reflected how grateful he was that he had not fallen back down the stairs. Quite apart from the injury that he would have sustained, he would have been found at the bottom of the stairs with all the same clothes on that he had dressed himself in a couple of days ago. He'd been bedridden ever since. The 2 dogs jumped onto the bed and happily snuggled into his sides, one on each side, grateful that their friend was unexpectedly spending the entire day with them in bed. His hands rested onto their warm bodies, gently rising up and down as they lay beside him, breathing slowly. They were very relaxed. The warmth from the dogs' bodies and the slow rise and fall of their chests, the heat from the bedroom radiator, the thick duvet, and his 2 sweaters all combined to propel Dave quickly towards unconsciousness once more. As he fell back into the land of Nod, where he belonged, on the bedside cabinet beside him, the hard-fought-for, half-full mug of tea slowly went cold. Remaining undrunk, and beside it, the paracetamol caplets remained unopened and untouched. The last thing he remembered was the sound of a couple of long, contented sighs, the noises that the dog of intelligence and the dog of loyalty always made when everything was right with the world. Today was a very good day. And that's the end of my short story. I hope you enjoyed it. Certainly it brings back happy memories of my 2 wonderful wee Westies. Everyone knows that Westies are the besties. I would agree with that myself. Okay, so it's Dave the Rave, Roving the Rock, over and out till next time. Cheers, years.